Tisha.
Jennifer.
We kind of ghosted our audience.
1,000%. I hope they're going to forgive us.
I really hope they will. We're really
We're
sorry.
sorry, guys.
Do you know what? I think for me, it has been, I love doing this and I love the conversations we have and I love putting the episodes out and the feedback we get. And I've definitely had at my dance show in the winter, somebody was literally like, "Oh, you have a podcast, don't you? I listened to you." And it was like this really weird, I didn't know what to say, but awesome moment.
Right.
So like I love doing this. I love saying that I'm a podcaster, but I don't know if this is the case for you, Tish, but the like this year specifically feels like a full on back to what life was
Oh,
more
yeah.
so like
Yeah.
pre-COVID.
Yes. I'm feeling it.
Yeah, and it's just been hard to balance and manage and figure it out. And the truth is that like there's a lot of time that goes into putting this show out and we love it.
Yes.
But
We get tired. I listen to this podcast and every intro, the girl's boyfriend is like, he does this little plug where he's always like, Mandy loves doing this show, but she gets tired. And like they're plugging like to support
like
her on
Patreon or Buy Me a
Patreon or
Coffee or
whatever
whatever.
it
Yeah, yeah,
is.
yeah.
Like,
I
thank you so
mean,
much for the
it's
bet. She
true.
gets tired. And just I'm listening to you talking. I'm like, yeah, because we absolutely love doing this, but we get tired.
We get tired. So if you were so inclined to support us either on Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee or any of those places, what that money could go to once it helps to pay for some of our software and stuff and annual subscriptions, um, it would get us an editor. That's my first big wish
So
because
we
I
could be
edit.
less tired.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So, but that's not why I'm saying it. I mean, yes, that's amazing, and obviously we want you to support us financially if you're able to. But it's all to say that the ghosting merely
It's not
happened.
that we don't love you.
It's not. It's and we've been actually still recording.
Yeah.
We're recording. This is a quickie. We wanted to give you all a little Valentine because we love you.
Yeah. It's not really a Valentine's Day story, but it's
No,
got a loving message, friends.
I mean, I call BS on Valentine's Day personally,
Yeah,
and
right?
did long before my widow status was a thing.
Yes.
It's more we wanted to give you an episode, and we picked one. I suggested this one. Well, Tisha, why don't you tell them what episode this is?
We are going to be listening to Kaitlin's story of domestic sex trafficking. It's definitely a favorite, I think, of mine and Jen's, and she is a favorite human being after recording this. I've never met her in real life. She's just amazing. Yeah, we just wanted to share an episode that's like from a little bit further back that maybe some of our newer listeners have not heard before, that maybe they're missing out on great content by not having gone back that far.
Well,
So here we
didn't
are.
Caitlin like the last 6 months or so? Caitlin got engaged, didn't
Yeah, she
she?
did.
Which
She
is so
did.
amazing.
Yes.
We've talked about this before. All of our former guests in our mind are our best friends.
Yes, naturally.
When we get to see this stuff like on social media, it's really exciting for us.
Mhm.
I suggested this episode for Valentine's Day because there's a really amazing moment towards the end of it
Yeah.
where Caitlin tells everyone who's listening that she loves them, that she loves
Yeah.
all of us. And like,
Yeah.
it gives me goosebumps. It was
It's
one
got a
of,
loving message.
it does. It definitely has.
It does.
Like, there are certain moments in certain conversations and episodes that, like, I still get goosebumps when I think about.
Yes. And this episode definitely has one of those moments.
Yeah, and it sounds like a really heavy topic, but we also, like, have ridiculous laughs because, like, Caitlin dealt with some ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
And definitely has processed her trauma and is able to kind of take a more humorous take with pieces of it, which,
Mhm.
makes it not, again, going back to the idea that I've heard from people that, they don't want to feel bad when they listen. You don't feel bad by the end of
No,
this one.
no.
Not at all. So happy Valentine's Day.
Enjoy.
Hi, welcome back to Now What? I'm Jen.
And I'm Tisha. This week we are going to be joined with Kaitlin, who was actually referred to us by my sister Haley. So shout out to Haley for the referral. Guys, we love when you recommend guests. It's fantastic. And Kaitlin is a survivor of domestic sex trafficking. She uses her lived experience to really educate others and to help other people. It's such a pleasure to have her with us today. I know that you're going to love listening to her talk. Hi, Kaitlin.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for being willing to come on the show and talk to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, Haley.
Yeah, I think we kind of were chatting before and saying, I think neither Tisha or I really know much at all about sex trafficking or human trafficking. It's one of those things you maybe hear about, but don't really either know somebody who's been through it or really know anything about it. So I feel like that might be common amongst a lot of our listeners. So we are grateful for you to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I guess, start where you feel comfortable starting. Like how you people can't see us, but we're like very white looking women who you just wouldn't expect of a privilege. We appear to be of a privilege that wouldn't be a concern. And so how does that happen?
Yeah, so I like what you said, just a few seconds ago about not knowing anyone that's been through it, when in fact you probably do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? So being a survivor myself, individual, whatever you want to call it, I was being trafficked and I actually had no idea what was happening to me. I thought, and part of my language, I had a shitty boyfriend that was making me do some really terrible things that I didn't want to do. Never in a million years did I think I was being trafficked. The word trafficked, like I thought, it had to look like the movie Taken or Law and Order or CSI Miami, like someone's like forcibly removing me and like bringing me to another country. And that's just not my story. That's not what happened. I really fall into that category where I identified my trafficker to be my boyfriend. He said, I love you. He promised me the world. And, it was almost like a dream in a really sick way. And even though I had to do a whole bunch of terrible things, he was still there for me. And he still said, I love you. He never left my side. So like it's kind of a whirlwind of emotions, because I think back on it and I'm like, did it really happen to me? Like, was I really trafficked? Because the word today is still super intimidating and it's really scary. And I talk to other people, especially youth, where they're like, oh, wow, this is happening. And I just can't believe it. And, to me, I'm like, oh, you're being trafficked, but I can't say that, right? Because when people identify, just like myself, I identified this person to be my boyfriend, didn't matter what you said to me, I wouldn't have believed you because it was so real, and the trauma bond with my trafficker boyfriend at the time, it was so real, like he took such good care of me. Like I'm in recovery. Actually, today marks 6 years of the last time I ever picked up a drink or a drug. So it's a special day for me today.
Oh, yay, congratulations.
Thanks. So when I was with this person, I was active in addiction and pretty bad, actually. I had about $1,000 a day habit. And this person was filling that need for me, right? So my most essential basic need at this time was my habit. I needed to use, I needed to drink. I had to have something in my body or else I'd get really sick. And, I just hated myself. So again, even though I'm having to do all these terrible things, it still was better than being by myself, because I had someone there. I had someone saying, I love you. I had someone, showing me that I was important and I was special, even though I was, and I'm doing air quotes here, just a no good junkie, because as quickly as he would say, I love you, he would also say, you're just a whore, or you're a no good junkie. No one's going to love you. And so it was just like really conflicting, It's hard.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like almost what you think of in like terms of a standard abusive relationship. Like that's what I would expect a shitty boyfriend to do, is to tell you that you're unlovable, but that he's the only one who loves you.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so when you're saying, I thought I had a shitty boyfriend, yeah, like that is kind of my definition of a shitty boyfriend too.
Well, yeah, and I think the misconception of trafficking is, yeah, like a movie or like a
That you're
container
taken.
full of people, you know, like that are
Mhm.
what like kidnapped from somewhere and being told they have to do this to survive.
It's not to say that that stuff's impossible, because it 100% could happen. Like,
Totally.
for sure your daughter or your son could be snatched. Like, it's not impossible. But the thing is like, when we're talking about human trafficking and in an Ontario context, and at least in my situation and what I see, there's some sort of connecting link. So, for me, I'm engaging at sex work. I had jobs here and there, but I'd always get fired. I couldn't keep them. I couldn't show up and then they'd fire me. And it was just like, you know what I mean? Like, just repetitive over and over. And so I was kind of talking to this guy, and he would say, okay, come here, do what you got to do. And this guy's going to give you drugs. So I was, I guess, engaging in circumstantial sex work, and this one night when I went over there, I had a big smile on my face and I'm wearing little clothes and makeup, and, everything looks amazing. But inside I was dying. Inside I felt like, it was like this big dark hole, and like, I did not want to be there. But I've got a big smile on my face because I know the only reason I'm there is to get what I need to get. And that was the substances, right? So I remember meeting this guy who was to be my trafficker, and I met him and I felt like I could put my guard down a little bit because he's a friend of so-and-so, and well, so-and-so is my friend, right? And so there's that connecting link where I felt like, it's like if you're on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, right? Whatever you use today, if you have, I'll just use Facebook because that's how old I am. You have like 30 friends in common with someone, right? You're like, okay,
They're
like,
safe.
yeah, they can't be that bad because, like so-and-so knows them. And then, oh my God, we've got like 75 friends in common. So you put your guard down. So when they reach out to you and they're like, hey, like, I'm so-and-so's cousin, like, remember me? You feel like, oh yeah, I do. Like, it's okay. And so that's how youth are living today. Right. And for me, when I would just accept people. Someone would add me and we'd have common friends, and I'd be like, oh yeah, they know so-and-so, and then accept. Right. But it's like my personal life is on social media. Like, I share me, I share Kaitlin, I share my nieces, like, you know what I mean? My family, my friends, my dog, my partner, right? Like, I don't want you on my social media if I don't know you. I don't care how many friends we have in common. If you're not my friend, I'm not here to collect friends. So when I met this guy, like, my guard was down, and I wear my vulnerabilities on my sleeve. Like, was very visibly an addict. And for me, I firmly believe that my vulnerabilities made me more susceptible to being trafficked, right? Had low self-esteem. I had low self-worth. I needed you to tell me I was pretty, and I needed you to tell me I was good enough because I didn't know how to do those things. That's why I used, right? I hated the way I felt. I was full of fear. I was full of anxiety. I was full of shame. Like, I needed something to make me feel better, whether it was you, it was the substances, it didn't matter, right? A job, shopping, food,
Just something to fill that void.
fill that void. Exactly. Yeah.
That makes, I mean, it doesn't make sense, but yeah, I think especially as women, it's really common to kind of get stuck in that kind of a loop
Mm-hmm.
where your self-worth is often defined by others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for, standard heterosexual women, it's typically defined by men. So when you speak of it that way, like, yeah, I probably did know somebody who was being trafficked.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Because the thing is it's just like, imagine someone calling 911, right? Or the police or whatever. And the police show up, and this woman or man says, my partner is, making me do stuff I don't want to do. Like, it literally sounds like a domestic, it sounds like just a couple is fighting and that's what's happening. When in all actuality, there were probably so many calls of human trafficking, but like, they just didn't know how to tell you because they didn't know what was happening. Like, take me, for instance, if I would have been, well, I was arrested with my trafficker, but I mean, like, I said, my boyfriend, my boyfriend. This is my boyfriend, right? And it was not. He was my trafficker, but I can't communicate that to you because it wasn't real for me. I really thought that this person loved me, and I really thought that he was just making me do some things so that we could have a life together, and we're both suffering. He's selling dope. He's selling my body too, but in the end we're going to be happy, and we're going to have a house and, like, I don't know, like a white fence, and we're going to be, I have no idea what I thought. Like, honestly, it just felt good. It felt like someone wanted to be around me and nobody wanted to be around me. Right. I was a disaster, and I had very little family in my life. I had very few friends, but the friends I did have were amazing. But it's hard to watch someone go down a really dark hole and not want help.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that was like very kind of common was when you were like, I wouldn't listen to anybody, even if they said something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really common too. We've all had a friend, and maybe we've been the friend that the other friends didn't like the boyfriend.
Yeah.
Right. And either you tell them and you like the relationship
and they're pissed.
Yeah. Or someone tells you and you're just like, fuck no.
Yeah. Well, I don't really care what you say. I like him, and that's that. Right.
Yeah.
But so how did that, I guess, relationship develop from like you meeting him? Was that a slow?
No, it was fast.
Okay.
So I was working in this restaurant actually. And, again, like, I didn't show up. And when I did, I was kind of half in the bag. I'd be late, or, I was like leaving on my break to go grab dope. So I was working at this restaurant, and, anyways, I just didn't make enough money. So I couldn't support my habit. And I keep saying habit, but it wasn't a habit. Like, I was a full-blown drug addict. Like, there was no like, oh, like I just have this habit. Like I needed it to live. And I remember talking to this guy, and like I mentioned earlier, right, he would have me come over and, just do these favors for people. And then I'd always get drugs after, and I'd kind of sit around and pretend like I was really happy and laugh and everything was okay, but it wasn't. And so when I met this guy, and I guess this is what is really crucial, especially for young people to know, is that my idea and conception of love is that if you had sex with me, it meant that you loved me. And if you didn't, there was something wrong with me. Like, I would internalize everything. I'm fat. I got a pimple on my face. There's like, it didn't matter what it was. Like, you looked at me funny. It's about me. I did something. It must be because I'm ugly, or I did something wrong, or how can I make you feel better and love me? Like, I just cared so much about what people thought about me. So when I met this guy, right, and he looked at me and he said, come with me. I think we were playing strip poker, and I was wearing barely any clothes, right? Big smile on my face, but inside I was dying. So I went into his room. It was actually a trap house. So there's like a whole bunch of people that live there. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I was just like, "Oh, like just having fun." And he was like, "You don't belong here." And he just started to ask me a whole bunch of questions, like, why are you here? Why are you doing what you're doing? How long have you been using drugs? Like, and then he kind of like didn't full blown ask me if I had been abused, but he's like, "Has anything happened to you before?" And these questions were so inappropriate given the circumstances and the fact that I did not know this guy, but it felt so good. Like, it honestly felt like this person cared about me. He cared about getting to know me.
Yeah,
and
you're having this raw, vulnerable conversation.
And he maintained eye contact. And I was like uncomfortable, because I was like, why isn't he looking at my chest? Or why isn't he like, you know what I mean? Why isn't he trying to sleep with me? And it just felt weird because, again, my comfort zone is chaos and craziness and insanity. Like, when shit hits the fan, Caitlin's like, okay, I can breathe, because I already know that shit's hit the fan. But like, when things are calm and quiet and cool, I'm like, oh dear, like, where's the fire alarm? I need to create something, chaos or a situation, because, it's going to happen.
You don't want to be caught off guard when the shit hits the
No.
fan, right?
Yeah,
if you can create that chaos.
Mm-hmm. So when we were talking, we talked for a while, and he didn't try anything, like, and he drove me home. and was like, hey, like, if you ever want to hang out, like, here's my number. And I was just like, what just happened? Like, this person like didn't try to sleep with me. He didn't ask for anything, and he gave me dope. Like, he didn't ask for money. So when I was still working at this restaurant, I would call him and he'd come drop off dope and then he'd leave. And I ended up getting fired. And I remember telling him, like, I just lost my job. I'm really sad. And he's like, don't worry. Like, I'm going to take care of you. And instantly I was like, wow, like, I don't have to worry. Like, I had to do so many things because of my addiction, right? I often feel that if I wasn't an addict, I wouldn't have experienced the majority of the traumas that I've experienced, right? I don't regret any of them, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, they suck, but I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't take any of them back because it's really shaped who I am today and the demographic, the people I get to work with, my life. There's so many more positives. So when I told him, he's like, I'm going to go on a trip with my friend, and, like, you should come with me. Like, I want you to come. And I was like, where are you going? And he's like, Calgary. Now it's like mid-January. I don't really want to go to Calgary. It's not really my dream spot, but it's the bottom line is that this person wanted to take me somewhere. He wanted to be around me. He said he was going to take care of me. Like, that stuff doesn't happen every day, and for someone like me, right, using as much as I was, he was giving me drugs for free. I remember I met his son, like, he had a young boy. I met his family. I met his friends. He brought me along when he did, like, he'd drop off drugs and stuff. So, like, his ride-alongs, like, I felt important. I felt like I was a part of his crew. I felt special, like, I know people hear that and they're like, well, that's ridiculous. But for someone like me, feeling accepted was like the most important thing in my life. Like, I needed to feel a part of things because, I just was so uncomfortable in my own skin. That's why I used, it's why I drank. It's why I did what I did, and then it just became an essential part of my existence.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He gave you, he wanted you to be around, or he made you feel like he wanted you to be around.
Yeah, he definitely did. So, really, really feeling like this guy loved me, really feeling like I was special and important. We went to Calgary. We drove actually with his friend. And we got pulled over in Marathon, Ontario. The OPP pulled us over. And I was just like, oh God, like, what's going to happen? Like, I was so scared. And I was always that person too, that, like, cops are so scary. They're like, is there anything in the car that I need to know about? Cause I'm going to find it. And I would always be like, I have drugs, But I didn't want to get you in trouble, and I wouldn't rat on you, but I would always rat on myself. Cause, like, I was just so full of fear. Like, I was the worst. So we got pulled over. Like, I also didn't have ID. The only form of ID that I had on me was an expired security license. I was a security guard for a while. And so the police officer asked for license and registration. And as soon as he got it, I think he took like 1 or 2 steps back to his car and turned around. He said, you're all under arrest. So there was like weed smoke coming out of the window, and, it was just kind of a given. So what happened next actually is pretty... I didn't understand it at the time, and I still don't understand it today. We did get separated, except he had taken the driver, which was my trafficker's boyfriend at this time, or so I thought. He took him first and put him in the other car. And then he came back and took his friend and put him in the same car. And I was so confused. I was like, what did I do? Like, why are they together? Why do I have to be by myself? And so when we got brought back to the station, we're like sitting in separate cells. Again, I was by myself and they were together. And I was so afraid. Like, I had never been in this situation before. And even though I knew, like, this guy's my boyfriend, like, I still, in the bottom of the pit of my stomach, felt like something wasn't right, So when the officer brought me in for questioning, he asked me, he's like, who are these guys you're with? And I was like, oh, my boyfriend and his friend. He's like, what's your boyfriend's name? And I, told him his name, and that said, that's his friend. And he's like, that's not his name. And instantly, right? So ever since I was a kid, I used to get this feeling, like I'm not ashamed to say this, but I didn't even learn what my feelings were till I was 26. Okay. I had no idea. I thought if you smiled, you were happy. If you frowned, you were sad. And if you were yelling, you were angry, that's it. So I used to get this feeling where like, I always felt like I was going to throw up. I would feel nauseous and like my stomach hurt. And I just, I just wanted to vomit. And that feeling came flooding back. And today I know that feeling is fear, right? Something's not right. I'm uncomfortable. I'm scared, right? I was really scared. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand why this guy who was supposed to be my boyfriend gave me a fake name. And the only thing I could think to do, because I can't say, excuse me, officer, wow, I'm frightened. Could you help me? Because I don't know what's going on. No, I smiled and said, oh, well, he gave me a fake name. Who cares? But inside I was like, help me. Right. But again, if that officer would have said, okay, you know what, ma'am, like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to get you a bus ticket. I'm going to get you some food. I probably would have told him to go fly a kite, because again, if he did all of those things and I get sent back home, how am I going to get my habit, right? How am I going to use? How am I going to feed myself? I have no money. I have no job. This person, remember, he said he was going to take care of me. So I smiled and I said, oh, well, cutesy little Kaitlin, who cares? And so as soon as we left the police station, we were there for hours. I remember, so his friend had, and this is another thing, his friend took the charge. It was drugs. And I instantly was like, see, I knew these guys were my friend, because like, you don't do that. Right. So again, I was reassured that like this person cared about me and they were going to help me. And now I don't have a drug charge, and he took it, and, I'm part of the crew. And as soon as we left, he said, you're going to have to work for me now. You're going to have to pay for so-and-so's lawyer. Like, this is all your fault. And it just flipped, right? Where the manipulation and the coercion stage kicked in. And and you know what? You know what I said? I said, yes, this is all my fault. I did this. And he said, if you didn't use drugs, we wouldn't be in this situation right now. Meanwhile, okay, low key, this guy's a drug dealer, right? But it's my fault. And I felt like it was my fault. And so, when we left, I remember the first stop we made when we got to Calgary was to the mall. And another thing that's really important is my boyfriend, right? Air quotes here. He never actually brought me physically into any stores or anywhere, right? So anytime I had to get something for work, again, air quotes, it was always his friend. It was never him. So, when I had to go to the bank and get money out, he would take me to the bank and my hand would go to the cash machine and then right to his hand, like it was never with my trafficker. So we went to the mall, got some underwear, work outfits, whatever. They were already posting my ad. So at this time, it was the website Backpage. They were posting my ads. They were writing what services I was going to provide. They were writing how much I was going to charge. When they let me sleep, I got to sleep. When they let me eat is when I got to eat. I had to work all day and all night. I remember waking up one day to him yelling at me and saying, we missed the morning rush. And it was like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. And then he would say, now you have to work all day. I know this is a little bit graphic, but, that time of the month had happened for me, and that was not a deterrence. He said, well, you know what? We'll just put a sponge in you. And again, I say that because in my brain and the way that I was thinking at that time, I felt like, wow, he really does care about me. Sick, right? But like, that's how I felt. This guy cares about me.
Wow.
Yeah. And, and that's how it was we were there for about a month, and it was the worst I've ever experienced. Like, I can't even begin to describe to you the pain and the trauma and the shame and the embarrassment that I felt during that time. And as bad as it was, again, it was still better than the way I was living before, because I wasn't alone. I had this person insulting me, but I also had this person saying, I love you. And I could not be without those 3 words, because I felt hopeless. I felt helpless. I felt worthless. Like, you name it, that's how I felt. And so even though I had to do a whole bunch of really terrible things, at the end of the day, I had him.
You had him, you had a roof over your head, you had what you had your drugs
You had
taken
your
care of.
drugs.
You had what you needed.
Yeah. So at that time, he actually used my addiction as a means of control, right? So he knew that when I would use, I couldn't stop. So anytime that I had a trick, and it was like, just my eyes were like lasers, like I knew, I was like, yes, like this guy's got dope, this guy's got booze, this guy's, and I didn't know how to stop. Like once I put something in my body, there's no stopping me. Like I go every 5 minutes, I need to do another line. I need to take another drink. I don't want to feel. And I don't anymore. I didn't use or drink because I liked it or because I liked the way that it made me feel. That was not my motivation. I hated myself and I needed to feel different. And if it was going to make me feel worse, I needed to feel worse. It was never better, right? I suffer from pretty bad depression, anxiety, and thanks to all these wonderful experiences, PTSD as well. But like it was never, oh yay, joy, I'm drinking. It was always, I need to get effed up because I hate myself. It was always misery.
Right.
Wow.
And it gave him a way to control you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so one instance is actually standing out to me. So I'm part of a 12-step fellowship today. And I've kind of been in and out of that program for a really long time, like really long time. And at this point, I clearly was not a part of this fellowship. But I had actually had a trick. So he made an appointment. I think it was few hours, 4 hours or something. And my trafficker had said, okay, like I'm going to be in the lobby and then I'll wait outside. And I don't know what they did, but when time was up, within that time period, I had taken quite a bit of drugs and drank, and I was out to lunch. Like I was not well. And so when he came back, he yelled at me. He called me a no good junkie, called me a failure, said he was going to leave me there. He was going to find someone else. And I remember starting to cry, and then he held me and he said, I'm so sorry. I love you. And I said, I'll go to a meeting, right? Just don't leave me. And I remember trying to sleep that night and I couldn't. I was wired, but I remember the next day I looked online and I found a 12-step meeting, and he dropped me off. And I get emotional because, this is why this stuff is so scary. It's not someone, again, not impossible, but it's not someone snatching you off the street in a van, holding you hostage and tied up and beating the crap out of you.
Right.
It's people manipulating you. What he said to me was, I'm so proud of you, because he thought that he was going to get me sober. So when he took me to that meeting, when he said that to me, I felt like he was proud of me again, and that he loved me again. And I just wanted it to continue going back to that first day when we met, when he didn't want anything from me, because my life was so terrible and I was so miserable, but like I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what was happening. I just thought, how is this happening to me when things were so good,
Right.
And so today, the people that I work with, it's so hard because I want to shake them and be like, this is what's happening, or,
Yeah.
but I can't, because at the end of the day, if you did that to me, I would have flipped you off and walked in the other direction. So the fact that I have my personal story and that I can talk about it today to hopefully connect with at least one person. And there's no judgment. I don't tell people you need to stop doing this or you need to leave this person because he's trafficking you. No, I'm going to say, are you safe? Is there anything I can do for you? Do you need anything from me? Do you know how to stay safe? Do you need harm reduction supplies? Do you have condoms? Do you know where the, sexual health clinic is? Like, I'm really going to get on your good side because I know what it feels like to be alone. I know what it feels like to sit in that hotel room and feel like you want to kill yourself because you don't know who the fuck is coming to your door. Right? Like, that's some really scary stuff. And you feel alone and you feel like no one's going to understand. And who do you even tell? Hey, I'm sitting in a hotel room by myself and my boyfriend is making me do some terrible shit. Right. People don't get that, and that's why we have these conversations, is because it's the emotion that matters. It's not the details, right? It's the fact that
Oh.
I know what it feels like to be ashamed of myself and bathe my body in bleach and still feel dirty.
Well, and when you're scared and ashamed and you didn't have anybody going into this, who the hell are you supposed to turn to?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in my case, and I love at the beginning, just to backtrack when you said, that we all are white, kind of privileged individuals, females, right? Because ultimately, I think that really plays a part. I don't want to say I came out unscathed because I got a lot of trauma, but I don't have a criminal record. I've done a lot of really terrible things, and I got arrested, but I didn't get charged. I feel very fortunate, very privileged, because I know multiple people that have been through the same thing that I have, and yet they have a criminal record. They got arrested, they got that charge, they went to jail. It's unfair.
And it's going to follow them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's unfair.
Right.
And I just think that having these conversations and learning about what human trafficking really looks like in an Ontario context is so important. It's important to ask questions and, admit when you're wrong and make mistakes. This is how we learn, again, and I say this over and over because, guys, I was trafficked and I had no idea I was being trafficked.
Right.
How do we expect people to know about trafficking if we don't even know what it looks like? You know what I mean? Every single person I know that's been through it, they're like, what? I was trafficked? You just don't know.
No.
And it's hard. It's a hard topic to talk about, but
Well,
so essential.
Yeah, it's a hard topic to talk about, and we don't know anything about it.
Yeah. I think, before we started recording, I said, this is really the first conversation that I've had with somebody about trafficking.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I have known women who were involved in sex work, and I'm wondering, were they being trafficked? Where is that line?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually love to talk about this. And actually a really good friend of mine, we used to work together and now we're just best friends. But she does a lot of work in the human trafficking community, and she's a human trafficking intervention counselor, crisis counselor, sorry. And so human trafficking, actually sex work really is on a spectrum, right? So
Yeah.
on one end, it's choice. So obviously you have to be over the age of 18. You literally choose what you do, what services you provide, what you wear, when you work, if you want to sleep, if you want to eat, you know what I mean? If you want to meet with this person, if you don't want to meet with this person, and you keep all your money. It does not go to anybody else unless you're paying for a cab, an Uber, a driver, whatever. You control your entire business. That is the choice, right? And a lot of people choose to do it. And a lot of people also don't want to talk about it because they think no one chooses to do that. I know plenty of people, right? Well, maybe I'm exaggerating. I know quite a few people who have chosen to do this. On the other end is coercion. So what it would be human trafficking. So what I experienced. I've also, anyways, the other C is coercion, and it's, you've been manipulated, you've been tricked, you've been told, I love you or whatever. You've been promised something, but there's an ulterior motive, right? And they get you and they hook you and they end up exploiting you. No part of that is choice. You can never provide consent or say yes or give, your choice or anything when you've been under manipulation, right? If someone's forced you to do something, it's just not possible. You don't keep your money or any of your earnings. I mean, maybe you keep a little bit. That's usually only in the beginning, and then they end up taking everything from you. But you don't control what services you provide. You are, in fact, told what you're going to do, and someone else is posting your ads and taking your photos. That would be on the other end of the spectrum, considered coercion. In the middle is actually quite like foggy and murky. So that would be like the circumstance, right? So a lot of people doing circumstantial sex work. So for me, kind of how I started out, right? Like I believe that if I wasn't a drug addict and an alcoholic, I wouldn't have needed to engage in sex work. I wouldn't have needed to pay for cocaine and whatever other drugs I was using, right? It often looks like someone is being exploited, but there's no third person, right? So in order to be trafficked, there's got to be force, fraud, coercion, and a third person has to do it to you. In the middle circumstance, like it looks like that, but it's just not human trafficking. It's usually someone's situation that's exploiting them, right? So maybe you growing up in poverty, maybe you got kids and you're a single parent, mom or dad, and you need to get money and you need to get fast money so that you can feed your family, right? Like there's so many, maybe you're in school and you don't want to be in debt. And so your situation is forcing you to make this choice, right?
Mhm.
It is important to know that absolutely every single person on this spectrum needs support, but that support looks different. I'm not going to support someone who's being trafficked the same way as someone who's choosing to engage in sex work. They're very different situations, and
Right.
everybody needs different support. There's no cookie cutter way of supporting someone. And I think, there's laws around human trafficking and there's laws around sex work, and we just have to separate them. It's unfair to put the two together because we can't best support people, right? If someone is
No.
choosing to do this, you need to support them. And not shame them for what they're choosing to do. And it's important to know that people can move along that spectrum, right? Like I've engaged in sex work and then I was exploited. And then I went right back into the sex trade myself due to my circumstance, right? I was a drug addict and I needed money. So I posted my own ad and thought, you know what? I can do this myself. I don't need anybody. It's important to know that people move along that spectrum and they will continue to move. And if someone chooses to stop, that's amazing. If they choose to stay, we need to still support them. And we can't ask someone to leave their situation until they're ready, until they want to do it, and until we are able to support them and fill those basic needs that their trafficker is supporting.
And and that's exactly the thing. Like you can't just expect somebody to leave when they have nothing to go to.
Exactly. It's like an
Right?
abusive relationship, right? If, people's, and I've been in many of these myself, right? My first fiance, because I was engaged twice, my first one, he used to beat the crap out of me. And then after he would actually cry and he would say, I'm so sorry. Don't go. I love you. And I believed him. And you know what? I really think he meant it. I still believe that today, but I think he was a very sick person. He had a lot of problems himself.
He had stuff that he needed to deal with.
Yeah. And I stayed, and people would say, what's wrong with you? And at one point I had cracked rib, black eye, like I was just broken. And they'd say, what, just leave. Like, what's wrong with you? And I would leave. And then I'd be far enough removed and say, oh God, what am I doing? Like, I can't leave him. He loves me. He's struggling too, right? That trauma bond that you get hooked in, you feel like it's your fault. I felt like I was betraying him. I felt like I was betraying my trafficker when I went and filed a police report, right? As soon as I left that police station, I thought, how could I do this? How could I do this to him after he took such good care of me? So actually, another story really quick about the trauma bond, because I think it's so important to understand that this is why people don't leave, or this is why it's so hard for people to leave, is it's those invisible bars. So like half the time, maybe more than half the time, you're not locked up. I could literally walk out the door, but there's invisible bars there that you can't see that are holding you there. They're keeping you there. What's going to happen? What if I leave and he catches me or she catches me? Will I ever find someone to love me again? That's why people don't leave. But anyway, so when we came back from Calgary, I remember watching the news. His face came up with his name, and he was wanted for like kidnapping, guns, like so many different things. And I was like, oh my goodness. I just drove across the country with this guy. Guess what I did? I hid him in my apartment, because if I just do one more thing, he's going to love me again. If I hide him and I help him, he's going to love me. It's going to go back to the beginning where he was proud of me, when he did nice things for me. He didn't make me do all these terrible things that I don't want to do. And if I just do one more thing, he's going to love me again.
Right.
And this is the cycle that people get stuck in, that trauma bond, right? And, you know, he came and then he ended up leaving. He turned himself in, he got released. And then, you know, we had just kind of lost contact because, like, I don't get our legal system. I don't know how that works. But, you know, it's hard, right? It's a really hard thing to try and overcome because it's really hard to identify. It's hard you feel like you're being judged. Like, how do you talk about this stuff? You know, like,
Yeah. Oh, and people are very judgy about it.
Well, yeah, I was thinking when you were talking, and not that, you know, people that are in abusive relationships aren't judged, but it's more actively like, how do we help you? Where when it's related to sex, anything related to sex is very uncomfortable.
yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? And people aren't comfortable that we don't talk about that in polite rooms. And, you know, like it's just not, which I think my upbringing is coming through, because like definitely not a comfortable conversation.
Well, and I think that's where the lines get blurred, right?
Yeah.
Is if someone's being paid for sexual acts, oh my God, it's wrong. We're going to help you. We're going to save you. Don't worry. I'm going to get you out of there. But then this person's being like, wait, what the heck? Like, what are you talking about? Crazy? Like, they don't want to leave, or they're not ready yet. We need to support people where they're at, and we need to do it as a community, collectively, because not one person is going to be able to save this person. It's not a save and rescue. It's how can we support our young people so that they don't feel the need to do this if they don't want to, so that they don't allow someone to manipulate their vulnerabilities in selling their bodies. We need to teach them about consent. We need to build them up. For whatever reason, if somebody grows up and they don't feel good about themselves and their caregivers aren't able to take care of them for whatever reason, because it happens and it's no one's fault, we need to work together as a community. It is so important that we build up each other's young people and each other's children. You know, I love kids. I see kids all the time. My nieces, oh my gosh, I don't want to actually say I would kill for my nieces because like I don't want to get in trouble, but like I would do just about anything for these kids. Like it's like they're my own. Like I just love them so much. And I look at them and I get to see them grow and I get to have conversations with them. Like, you guys have kids, right? Like, you know what it's like. Like, I'm not a mom. I'm an aunt. I think I'm the best aunt in the world. I look at these girls and I have conversations with them. And when they call me Aunt Dee Dee. I don't know where this came from, but they say, Aunt Dee Dee, I love you. And it's honestly like whatever I went through, it doesn't even matter. Like it honestly doesn't even faze me in that moment. I know that I have a major purpose on this earth. I'm a friend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a coworker, I'm like a spiritual being. I get to be a dog mom, you know? And I know that all those things that I went through, I get to hopefully help prevent them from happening to other people. You know, I get to be a sober, amazing example for my nieces. You know, they've never had to see me under the influence ever. Like, what a gift, you know, that they look at me and they see, I don't know what they see, but they say I love you. So I think they love me.
They see you for you.
They see your cool aunt who probably does amazingly fun things with them and loves them more than anything.
Yeah.
Like,
you know,
that to me sounds like it's part of your healing too. And just when you said that they say, I love you, it brings me back to all the times that you said, that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was saying that to you.
Well, and they actually love you. Like,
well, and that's what it is, right? The flip side is that I don't need to hear that today. I love hearing it. And it is so magical and it makes me feel so warm and fuzzy, but it is not my basic need today. Today, I love myself and I struggle with that. And sometimes I really don't like what I see in the mirror, but I still love Kaitlin. And I know that no matter what happens in my life, I will never ever be exploited again, because I know what my vulnerabilities are. They're not going away. Trust me, I am so insecure. I look at myself and I'm like, oh my God, don't eat that cupcake. But like, I love that cupcake, and I'm going to keep eating that cupcake, and I'm going to keep talking to people about how you should love yourself. And it starts with hating yourself. If you know what it feels like to look in the mirror and cry and not like what you see, you are capable of loving yourself. And that's what it starts with. And that's what I love about my nieces being so tiny and small, is that we get to have those conversations about, if you don't want to do something, you don't have to. And, you know, my best friend, so it's her kids. She, you know, she listens to them. You know, when they say, Mommy, I don't want to do that, she says, okay. She respects their boundaries, you know, and this is what I think is so important. That I know when I was a kid, I was told to go hug uncle whoever, or, you know, go hug a friend of the family. And that's just how it was back then. It's not like that today, you know.
It can't be like that. It can't.
Yeah, if you're uncomfortable with hugging an uncle or a brother or I don't even care who it is. You don't have to, because your body and your feelings are way more important, and we need to respect our children and how they feel. So being an example for them is probably my main drive in life. Like, these girls are my life. And you know, all the youth that I work with today, like, I just see so many magical moments and so many beautiful things happen. And it's so hard and it's so difficult, but it's so rewarding. You know, change happens when we're uncomfortable. And so when I see people uncomfortable, I know that change is coming.
Yes, 100%. I have 2 questions.
Yes.
So you touched on it, and I just kind of wanted to clarify. So the relationship ended basically when he went to jail. So there wasn't any like somebody stepping in, or like a
Oh no, his friend stepped in, and I worked a few more times, like I want to say maybe 2 or 3. And the last time I had actually just dipped, I left the hotel, and I actually remember I was in and out of that 12-step fellowship I keep talking about, and I had actually called this woman who was sponsoring me, and I told her what happened, and I said, you know, I'm here, I'm working, and you know, it was almost like I was given this like glimmer of hope and like courage to walk out, and I was able to leave, and I went home. And that's kind of where my journey of recovery began, because, you know, so many things happened after that. Like, I won't even divulge, but long story short, I ended up calling a treatment center, and it takes like 5 million years to get in on OHIP. So I had actually forgotten about my bed date, but I did make that call. And when the time came to go to treatment, I went, and it was super scary and it was super hard work. But that's where my journey kickstarted, right? And the other thing I want to say about that is that after I graduated from this treatment center, so I was sober for about a month. And one of the first things I did when I got out is I was like, I need to like file a police report, because in my brain, it was, you know, you go to a police station and you file your police report, and then police find the bad guy, and then the bad guy goes to jail, and woohoo, everybody lives happy, right? When in fact, just in case you didn't know, that's not what happens. I went to court for like 2 years. It was traumatic. It was terrible. It was hard. And actually, I lasted about 86 days sober. And after I made that report, I remember walking out of the police station. I was a frequent flyer at this police station. And I wanted to kill myself. I was ashamed of myself. I felt like I had betrayed the one person that had taken such good care of me. And even though I was in a relationship with someone else, that trauma bond really had me. I lasted 86 days, and I tried to kill myself. I woke up in a hospital in restraints with 2 officers guarding my door. And the only thought I had in my brain is it didn't work, right? I've tried to live. I've tried to be sober. I've tried to get high. I've tried to kill myself. What do you do? Like really, what do you do when you feel like you've tried it all? You know how hard it is to try and kill yourself, and you can't even do that properly. You really feel like a failure. And the fact that that was my solution, I felt so bad that I wanted to die. And that's how a lot of people feel today, especially, you know, what's happening in our world with this pandemic. There are so many people that They're not receiving the proper supports. They don't know how to reach out. There's a stigma. There's a bias.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Services are expensive,
Yep.
Absolutely.
And your second question.
My second question. Well, you talked a lot about, support, and people need support, and so how understanding that, not, I don't think we know any woman who would listen to a friend who told them they thought their boyfriend was a dick and doing something wrong. How can somebody, how can you, because you do this on the regular, how can somebody better support someone that they think is in a relationship, air quotes, where they're being trafficked?
Just be there, like, again, you can't really say, excuse me, you're being human trafficked, so like, come with me, I'm going to help you. That's like not understandable. I'll give myself as an example. When I have people in my life that I work with, or a friend who is currently in the game or being trafficked, I just call them. I check in. I ask them how they're doing, right? We cannot afford to judge our people, our brothers and our sisters. It's just not okay. They feel it themselves. They judge themselves. They do not know what's really going on. And maybe they do. I don't know. But we just have to continue checking in on our brothers and sisters. Like, that's what it is. And this doesn't just happen to females. This happens to males. It happens to whatever you identify yourself to be. It's happening to them. We have to be transparent and ask difficult questions. Like, if you know someone who like always was like dressing in sweatpants and like sneakers and like a messy bun, and now all of a sudden they're like tip top bomb, be transparent. Oh my God, where'd you get that purse, man? I want that purse. I can't even afford it. Like, where did you get it? Tell me about the sale. Stick to your personality. Like, you can actually ask those questions. At the end of the day, maybe this person is waiting for someone to ask because they don't know how to tell you. So what, if they tell you to go fly a kite, your ego is bruised for what, all of 2 seconds before you go home to your loving family? And then they're going home to what? A shelter, a hotel room, their pimp, boyfriend, air quotes. Like, who knows, right? Just be transparent and be loving and non-judgmental. And we have to kind of work from a harm reduction standpoint. If someone is actively using or engaging in these behaviors, ask them, what do you need from me? What can I do for you?
Right. Yeah.
Do you need me to connect you to anybody?
Yeah. And, what would you hope, whether it's related to trafficking or not, or like, what would you hope people could take from your story?
You can't keep me down. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I would, man, my most sacred and favorite thing in life is love. I believe it is so important. And as human beings, we need hugs, we need touch, we need communication, we need to be in contact with another person, human beings. And when we don't get that, we are lacking a serious basic need. And I know for myself, even though I was, being exploited all day and I had physical contact, I was not receiving love. I was not receiving affection. I was being lied to. So if anyone could take anything from my story, I always actually say this. I don't know what you go through. I don't know what you guys really have been through. I don't know what you struggle with on a daily basis. But I hope that you would remember that if no one has told you that they love you, I love you. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because, people are always going to try and manipulate you, no matter who you are, in whatever context, exploitation, jobs, whatever. I really don't know. But just remember that every single person on this planet has vulnerabilities. And just because I was more susceptible to being trafficked because of those vulnerabilities, they did not leave me. Like, I legit still have them today. If you are vulnerable, if you're insecure, if you grew up in a marginalized community, again, I don't you being racialized, like know what your vulnerabilities are and own them, name them, keep them, cherish them. Nobody can use them against you if you know what they are, ever.
Yeah. And we all have them.
We do.
We
We
all
do.
have them. And we all have a
girl.
story. And it's so easy, you know, for someone to meet you today, they would never guess maybe that you had that you have this history, right? And that's the same thing as your neighbor, your bus driver, the person checking you at the grocery store. Like, we all have a story and we all have vulnerabilities, and that's part of being human. Right. And that's part of the beauty of being human too, is just that we all have stories, we all have wisdom, we all have vulnerabilities. But I think, as you've said, like, knowing what your vulnerabilities are can really help.
Everything.
We had
help arm you, right?
Yep.
We had a family therapist, my kids and I, who always said, you know, name it to tame it, with like big feelings. But that's what came to mind when you were talking. Because like, if you name your vulnerabilities and recognize them and own them, then you're in control of them.
100%.
This was a really amazing conversation, Kaitlin. Thank you so much for coming on. We are so grateful for you. And I mean, I speak for myself. Like, I'm just grateful that there's someone like you here in this world doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you guys are here to do your part, you know, because I think it's so important to have, you know, I know you guys have your own story because you've given me a glimpse of it. But it takes two to tango, right? And I think it's really important to have, you know, I hate saying like survivors unite, but you know, it's important to have people that have been through something come together, because this is honestly how we are going to conquer the world. This is how we're going to build people up. This is how we're going to get people out of the depths of the disaster that they're in, by coming together, you know, picking people up when they don't feel good about themselves, being there when they don't feel good about themselves, loving them until they love themselves. It's just so important. So I really applaud you for what you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Now What Pod. If you've enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. Your ratings and reviews help more people like you find our podcast.
Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone you think would love it. You can find us on social media at the Now What Pod. Until next time, we're Tisha and Jen. Remember, your story matters and you do too.